Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. Today's video is part of a Crocktober collab hosted by Sammy from Managing the Maze and Tamara from Southern Wife Everyday Life. I will have a link to their channels as well as to the collab playlist in my description box below. So as soon as you're done watching my video, make sure you check out the playlist. There will be lots and lots of yummy crockpot recipes. If you're new to my channel, like I said, my name is Megan. I do weekly what's for dinner videos, grocery hauls, other recipes, and foodie content. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, take a look around my channel and subscribe if you're not already. And if you're returning to my channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. First up, I'm making barbecue meatballs. Now, I've been making these for years and years and years, like I'm sure many of you have. But maybe about a year and a half ago, I saw Taylor Elmore do a little twist to these, and I've been doing it ever since and love it. It is one of our favorites. So let me show you how to do this. And of course, Taylor's channel will be linked in the description box below as well. So for this, you really only need 3 ingredients. First up, you need meatballs. You can use homemade, of course. I just use frozen. It's easy. And I've tried many different brands of meatballs, and to be honest with you, I like these from Dollar General. They're just the dollar store brand. They're a good little size. They're not too big. They're not too small. And I just really like the flavor. And best of all, they're pretty cheap. They're like less than $3 for this bag. But again, just use your favorite brand, your favorite kind. I would suggest using more of a home style meatball than like Italian. But again, just use your preference. Next, you'll need some barbecue sauce. Again, use your favorite. I have some of this Famous Dave's barbecue sauce on hand, so I'm going to use that today. Now, for Taylor's little twist. Normally with barbecue meatballs like this, you would use grape jelly. She suggested using pepper jelly. Now, this happens to be homemade, but you could just use store-bought. This doesn't make it super spicy, but it adds just a nice little kick to it. So to put this together, so ridiculously easy. All we're going to do is add the meatballs, the barbecue sauce, and the pepper jelly to a crock pot. And then I like to cook these on high for 2 hours, and I stir them halfway through. Now, with meatballs in the crock pot like this is just my personal preference and my, from my experience, this definitely is not something that you want to cook all day long. If you cook meatballs for too long in the crock pot, they get really tough and hard. So I cook them for 2 hours on high, like I said, stirring halfway through, and I don't ever have a problem with that. Really just cook these until they're heated completely through and they're tender, and you're done. So here's what it looked like when it was done. You can have these, just as like dinner with maybe mashed potatoes or rice and a green vegetable or salad. But these also make a great snacky dinner or an appetizer for game day, family movie night. So many great ways to serve these up, and they are a crowd pleaser and definitely a family favorite. Next up, I'm making split pea soup. This is one of my family's favorites. My dad used to make this for us growing up. I don't follow a specific recipe, but I will link a recipe in the description box below for you. That's pretty much what I do. So here are the ingredients that I'm going to use to make this. Feel free to substitute anything, based on what you've got on hand or what you and your family prefer. So first we need the split peas. These are really pretty inexpensive. If you've never had them before, they're pretty similar to lentils and have like a similar texture almost. I've got some carrots, celery, and if you've been with me for a while and you see the celery and you're like, Megan, you hate celery. I know I do. But I have learned just like here within the past month, if I puree it or like use it, put it in the food processor to where it's like super small, I can manage it. I don't totally hate it pureed like that, but to sit and eat it like just by itself, nope, pass for me. So for the remaining ingredients, I've got a russet potato that I'm going to wash and peel, an onion, some minced garlic. You can use chicken stock or broth. I'm going to use water and some chicken bouillon, bay leaves, salt and pepper, and then I just have this cubed ham on hand. This is a great way to use up like a ham bone, or if you've got leftover ham, especially around like Thanksgiving and Christmas is a great way to use that up. If you don't have ham or you don't want to use it, you could just, substitute for what you do like, bacon, ham hocks, smoked turkey necks, anything, or you can just make it vegetarian. Now, you could totally do this as a dump and go crock pot recipe and just throw everything into the crock pot. But like I mentioned with the celery, I've learned that I have to basically put it in the food processor. So I decided to do it this way today. Again, you can just put everything in the crock pot if you want. If you've got littles who aren't fans of veggies, I would suggest you doing it like this. So in my little food processor here, you see I added some carrot. I washed it and peeled it, the celery and the onion, and I just, buzzed that until it was a super, super fine texture. Now to the crock pot. I'm going to add the split peas. I put them into a colander, rinse them under cold water, and then just kind of, sort it through them just like you would dried beans. Next, I'm adding in the chicken broth. And like I mentioned, if you want to keep this vegetarian, you could use vegetable stock. Once I've added that, I'm going to add in the vegetables. Like I said, I've pureed these up. If you haven't pureed them, you could just chop them up into bite-sized pieces. Next, I'm going to add in the chopped russet potato, and I don't mind the texture in that, so that's why I added it just like that. I didn't want to, put it in the food processor. So here I'm going to add that cubed ham as well as the minced garlic. Then I'm going to add a bay leaf and season to taste with salt and pepper. Now, if you do check out the recipe link down below, do note that I did have this recipe because it was just the two of us. And to be completely honest with you, Gary does not love split pea soup. That's a tongue twister. But it's definitely one of my favorites and one of my family favorites, so I wanted to share it with you. But I just had the recipe because I knew I'd pretty much be the only one eating it. So here's what it looked like when it was done. As you can see, it kind of looks a little separated, but don't worry. Just give it a really good stir. You want to cook this on low for about 7 to 8 hours. You could also cook this on high for maybe about 4 or 5 hours. And the split peas just kind of naturally puree themselves, which is pretty much why Gary doesn't like the soup. He doesn't care for pureed soups, I've learned. But this is so yummy, so comforting. Just make sure you remove that bay leaf. You really do not want anybody to bite down on that. So for this evening, just kept it simple. I served it up with some sliced spaghetti, and to garnish it, I added a little bit of crumbled bacon pieces along with some freshly chopped parsley. And like I said, this is just a family favorite. It's so comforting. It's a fairly inexpensive meal, and it's perfect for the upcoming cooler weather. Next, I'm going to share with you one of our favorite Crockpot side dishes. This recipe is from the plain chicken. Of course, it'll be linked down in my description box below. This is a creamed corn with bacon. And per usual, I have the recipe. Here are the ingredients that I'm going to use. First, for the corn, the recipe suggests using frozen corn. I personally prefer the texture of fresh or canned, so I'm going to use canned. I'll make sure to drain it really well. I've got some salt and pepper, milk. Now the recipe also calls for heavy cream, or you could use half and half instead of the milk and cream. I didn't have half and half on hand, and this morning I ran out of cream. I didn't want to go to the store just for the little bit for this recipe, so I'm going to use milk. It'll be fine. I've got some cream cheese, and then we of course need some bacon for our creamed corn with bacon. This is some bacon that I cooked up for breakfast one day this week. I just had it left over. I'm going to chop that up. You can also use the pre-cooked bacon crumbles. That's fine as well. And then we're going to need some green onions as a garnish. If you don't like green onions, you could skip it. If you don't have them, you could always use chives or dried chives. I've got my crock pot here, and the recipe doesn't say to do this. You really don't have to, I guess, but I like to spray it with a little bit of cooking spray. I'm going to add in the drained corn, and again, you want to make sure that you drain this really well so you don't have the extra liquid in there. I'm going to add in the milk. You'd add in the heavy cream here if you're using that. Next, I'm going to add in the cream cheese. And I just now thought about this, but I think the chive cream cheese would be good in this as well. I think I'll try that next time. I'm adding in the cooked and crumbled or chopped bacon. I'm going to season this with just a little bit of salt and pepper. You've got, the canned corn obviously has some salt in it, the cream cheese, the bacon. So you want to kind of go a little shy on the salt. I'm going to, like I said, add the pepper and then give that just a tiny little stir. I'm going to cover that with a lid and cook this on low for about 4 hours. Now, I do like to go in halfway through and give it a stir. That's what it looked like halfway through. And then for today, I don't know why I decided to experiment when I'm filming a favorites video, but I decided to do an immersion blender just a little bit. I didn't blend it very much. I probably blended like a quarter of it. The recipe doesn't call for you to do that. I don't typically do that. Again, I just experimented in today's video, and it was delicious, but it's also delicious without the immersion blender. So you can do it if you prefer like a little smoother texture or to thicken it up a little bit, but it's not necessary. So here's what it looked like when it was done. All you do is just add the chopped green onions on top as a garnish. It also adds it or gives it a nice texture, a nice freshness, and that's it. This is so quick and easy. It is a crowd favorite. This would be really great to take to a potluck or something that you could take, maybe if you're not super experienced or knowledgeable in the kitchen yet and you're still like a beginner cook, this would be great to put together for like Thanksgiving or the upcoming holidays. Last up, I'm making Crockpot Korean barbecue. I first made this several months ago. I saw it on Instagram and it has become quickly a family favorite. We love this. If you love Asian flavors or if you're trying to introduce Asian flavors to your family, I highly recommend you give this recipe a try. I saw it on Instagram. The lady's Instagram name is Dinnerin321. I'll have her Instagram linked below, and she also has a website, so I'll link her website as well. This is so easy to put together and it is delicious. Here are the ingredients I'm going to use. Now, I do differ a little bit off of her recipe, but that's a great thing about recipes. You can substitute ingredients or use things that you like. The recipe calls for flank steak, and I happen to have found this flank steak on markdown at Kroger. It was a really great price. I'd placed it in my freezer, so I just allowed it to thaw completely. Now, flank steak can be a little on the pricey side, so I looked on Google, and it says that some more inexpensive alternatives to flank steak are skirt steak, flat meat or sirloin tip, chuck steak, or round steak. So you can look for those items as well. Now, for the other ingredients, I've got brown sugar, onion, cornstarch. The recipe calls for beef broth. I didn't have any beef broth and I didn't have any beef bouillon on hand, so I'm just going to use water and chicken bouillon. It'll be fine. I've got some ginger paste here. Her recipe doesn't call for it, but I wanted to go ahead and add it. I've got this little tube of ginger paste on hand that I need to use up, so I'm going to add it. You could do ginger powder if you'd like to do that, or ground ginger. Sesame oil, soy sauce. Her recipe calls for crushed red pepper flakes. I have some gochujang on hand. I got this at Target. I have also found it at Publix and Kroger. I've got it on hand, and it's a little more traditional for Korean food, so I'm going to add that, but just use your preference. Use what you've got on hand. And last but not least, the recipe calls for garlic powder. I'm going to do minced garlic. Just use whatever you prefer, or you can do it extra garlicky and use both. A quick note before I show you this recipe. So if you see this wallflower plug that I have plugged in, I'm not sure why or what happened, but when I went to export this video to YouTube, it kept giving off a strobe light effect. I tried many different things to stop that, and nothing that I did mattered. And I know that that can trigger migraines for some people. So here in just a second, I'm going to put up my little follow me on Instagram icon and cover that. I know it's kind of an awkward placement, and I apologize about that. That's kind of the only solution I could come up with, because like I said, editing wise, nothing I did stopped that. So I'm going to move that plug going forward so I don't have that issue. I do apologize about it, but I wanted to make sure to try to cover it as best as I could, because like I said, I know that that can trigger migraines for some people. So that being said, let me show you how I put this together. So to the crock pot, this is so easy. This is really a dump and go recipe for the most part. I'm going to chop up the onions, and I got one of those little like food choppers that you like Hulk smash the vegetables. I got it like a month or so ago, and I'm actually really liking it. I wasn't sold on it at first. I was like, well, if you kind of have to cut the vegetables up to put that on there, why don't you just go ahead and chop it? But it actually really does save some time. So anyway, I've added that onion, and basically we're going to add everything else. So we're going to add the soy sauce, the sesame oil. I forgot to mention I also added the chicken broth. You would add the beef broth if you're using it. Now for the brown sugar. So this recipe, it does read just a tiny bit on the sweet side. So if you prefer like more spicy food, you could add more of the crushed red pepper flake or gochujang, or you could cut back a little bit on the sugar. We like it, but like I said, it's just like right there on the line. It's not too sweet, but it is kind of there on the line. So maybe add like a half a cup of the brown sugar and then give it a taste once it's done. You can always add a little more if you feel like it needs it. Now, we normally add kimchi and or sriracha to this right before we eat it. So like I said, we don't find it too sweet, but if you're worried about that, just cut it back a little bit and you can always add more, like I said. So I'm adding the cornstarch, the ginger, and the garlic. I'm going to give that a little stir, and then I add the flank steak. I like to press the flank steak into the mixture a little bit. We're going to cover this with a lid and cook it on low for about 6 to 8 hours, or you can cook it on high for 4 to 5 hours. I do like to go through like halfway and flip the steak over. You don't have to do that. The recipe doesn't say to do that, but I just feel like the steak cooks a little more evenly when I do that. So here is me doing just that, flipping it over at the halfway mark. Now, after it's, like I said, about 6 to 8 hours and the steak is tender, I remove the steak. Then I shred it with a fork, and then I add it back to the crock pot and give it a stir. And this is what it looked like. At this point, give it a taste, and you can adjust the seasonings here if you would like. Now, the recipe suggests serving this over noodles or rice. We like serving it over the momofuku, I hope I'm saying that correctly, noodles. Dinner in 3 to 1 actually suggested those. I found those at Target, and those noodles are delicious. This night, I decided to mix the noodles in with the sauce and the beef. So good. So yummy. All right, so here are the plates. I just served up the beef, like I said, mixed with the noodles. And then on this particular night, I'd made some steamed broccoli and carrots. And I highly recommend serving particularly broccoli with this. The broccoli with the noodles, and you could even honestly mix the broccoli in with the noodles and beef. I don't know what it is, but that broccoli adds such a nice like freshness and crispness to the noodles. It's just so good. I did garnish the beef and noodles with some chopped green onions, and then we had some kimchi in the fridge that needed to be used up, so I added some to Gary's plate. I just wasn't in the mood for kimchi tonight, so I passed on that. And like I said, this is a yummy dinner. It's easy to put together, and I definitely think your family will enjoy it. All right, that is it for today's video. I hope you liked this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and don't forget to check out the collab playlist. Again, it will be in the description box below for you. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.